The air in the village of Kaloa turned heavy just as the sun began its slow descent behind the thorn trees. A hush fell like a blanket over the clustered mud-brick homes, broken only by the creaking groan of the ancient death bell swinging atop the temple tower. Its hollow clang echoed over the savannah, summoning villagers from their evening fires, grinding mills and quiet prayers. They came barefoot, some still gripping cooking spoons or children's hands, others in silence, already mourning. The bell did not toll lightly. It rang for death, and this time for a king. Chief Jabari had been many things in his life. Once hailed as the Lion of Kaloa, he was a man whose voice stirred warriors and whose laughter filled festival nights. His reign had started with peace and harvests so rich the granaries had burst. But those golden years had long faded, and with them so had the man. Whispers of his madness began after his journey to the northern mountains, a pilgrimage only the desperate or cursed dared make. When he returned, something in him had changed. His skin grew pale under the sun. He shunned the elders, burned the old masks of his ancestors, and scribbled symbols onto the palace walls in the blood of sacrificed goats. His eyes, those proud amber eyes, turned as cold as stone. Now, as his wrapped body lay beneath the woven shroud in the temple's center, villagers gathered around the bier, avoiding his face as though even in death, his eyes might open and curse them. A group of elders stood at the front, faces drawn tight with shame and duty. Behind them, bound at the wrists with braided bark rope, knelt Amara, his widow barely 20, a girl from the river clans who had once laughed freely in the market. She did not weep. By the law of spirit cleansing, intoned Elder Bakery, his voice cracked by age and fear, the soul of the cursed shall not rise again if his tether to the living follows him into the dark. His blood wife must join him. There were no protests, no cries of mercy. Only a few averted eyes and a young child quietly clutching his mother's dress, whispering, "Mama, is she going to die?" They dragged Amara forward as drums began to beat, not the rhythm of celebration, but a hollow, slow mourning that shook the dust from the earth. She was led to the tomb, carved generations ago beneath the roots of the tree of binding, where all cursed chiefs were sealed. Her feet scraped the stone steps. Her wrists bled beneath the bindings. She walked upright, her back unbroken, her chin raised, even as the tomb's heavy door creaked open before her. As she stood at the edge of darkness, Amara turned her head slowly, eyes finding the faces that dared not meet hers. Then she said, voice low but sharp enough to cut stone, "He's not dead, he never was." And the door slammed shut behind her. Before the death bell tolled, before the tomb was sealed and the village turned its back, there was still a time when Amara believed she could save him. Back when Jabari was still the man whose laughter rumbled in his chest like thunder before rain, whose hands were rough but warm, whose voice called her moonlight, beneath the tall acacia tree where they'd first kissed. But that man had not returned from the northern mountains. Jabari's pilgrimage had lasted 41 days. He'd gone seeking a cure for the withering of his bloodline, 3 sons lost to fever, a daughter stillborn, and dreams filled with ash. The elders had warned him, "Do not climb beyond the black cliff, chief. The spirits that linger there are not of this world. They demand much and give little." But Jabari was desperate. He left with warriors and wise men, returned alone, cloaked in silence, eyes shadowed like the dying moon. The first signs were small. He flinched at daylight, cloaked his hut in animal skins so thick no sunlight could enter. He demanded the ancestral drums be silenced, claiming the sound scraped his bones. Then came the voices. Amara would find him sitting in the dark, whispering to empty corners. "They speak in tongues," he told her one night, his voice trembling and eyes distant. "They remember things, things I never knew. They show me what must be done." "What things?" she had asked. He only smiled, a crooked thing that did not reach his eyes, and whispered, "Order. They offer me order." Days passed. Then laws changed. He outlawed mourning songs, burned the sacred harvest masks, and declared that no one may dream without permission. A decree so strange the elders thought him joking, until he sent guards to beat a man who claimed to see his dead wife in a vision. He dismantled the council of voices, elders who had guided Kaloa for generations, calling them rot at the root of the tree. Amara watched it unfold like someone drowning behind glass. She tried to reason with him, begged him to speak to the old shaman of the forest, Kunda, the whisperer who knew the ancient names of wind and disease. Jabari's rage was sudden, vicious. "You would take me to a dirt eater?" he roared, throwing a clay bowl against the wall. "You betray me with that beast in the woods?" That night, guards pulled Amara from her chambers, accused her of conspiring against the chief, of planting poison in his food, of opening the palace gates to dark spirits. Her cries of innocence were smothered beneath ritual accusations and the cheers of a frightened people desperate to believe their chief's madness had a cause outside themselves. Banished from the palace for a week, she wandered the fringes of the forest, half-starved, until Kunda found her near the edge of a sacred grove. "He is not sick," Kunda said, examining a bone knife Jabari had left behind. Its carvings shimmered with a language not spoken in any land. "He is claimed. The mountains took part of him and gave back something, waiting." Amara returned, knowing the danger but refusing to abandon him. She found Jabari thinner, his skin pale and marked with strange lines, as though cracked like pottery left in the sun too long. His pupils, once bright and warm, were wide and dark, swallowing all light. He did not recognize her at first. Then he smiled. "They say you went into the forest," he rasped. "Did you tell them I'm unworthy? That I'm impure?" "No," she whispered. "I told them I still love you." For a moment, something behind his eyes trembled. Something human. But the next morning he collapsed in the middle of the great circle. No breath. No heartbeat. The villagers wailed. The guards, pale with fear, declared him dead. The council, now reformed without the old elders, moved quickly. "Poison," they said. "By the hand of a jealous wife." No trial. No mourning. She feared his power. She sought to end him. Amara did not scream as they seized her. She had already felt death the day he stopped calling her Moonlight. Her tears had dried the moment she saw the lines on his arms forming shapes that moved when no one was looking. They dressed Jabari in burial cloth, but the body never cooled. It remained strangely warm, his skin pliant, his jaw too loose. Kunda tried to speak, but the councilman threatened to burn him next. So it was decided, Amara would be sealed with him. She never stopped them. Not when they bound her, not when they painted her with the sacred ash of guilt. Only once, when they placed Jabari beside her on the stone altar before the tomb, did she lean down and place a kiss on his cheek. "You're still in there," she whispered. "I know it. I only hope what's sharing your skin doesn't open its eyes first." Darkness swallowed her whole as the tomb door thundered shut behind her, sealing her in silence so complete it rang in her ears. The air was thick, the kind that stuck to the throat like oil. The scent was worse, damp earth, decaying offerings, the sharp tang of old blood, and something else, something sour and metallic that made her gag before she'd taken 3 steps forward. Her fingers reached out blindly, brushing against stone walls slick with moisture. Her breath quickened. She was alone. Or so she thought. Amara backed into a corner, her spine pressed against the cool rock as she tried to calm the racing in her chest. Her eyes slowly adjusted to the dim, and what little light remained came from a crack in the stone ceiling, no bigger than a coin, casting a pale beam that fell directly onto Jabari's wrapped body. She had not yet looked at him. A strange rhythm echoed in her ears, not from outside but inside her own body. Her heart beat, yes. But beneath that, something else. A pulsing sound too measured to be natural, like the thump of feet stomping dry earth, like drums from far away. It stopped when she held her breath, but returned stronger each time her chest rose again. And then he stirred. Amara blinked. His chest, beneath the burial shroud, rose. Just slightly. What? Then again. "No," she whispered, stumbling forward. She fell to her knees beside him, yanking back the cloth with trembling fingers. His face was the same as in life. Lips parted, brows drawn faintly together as though caught mid-thought. But it was the breath, barely there but undeniably real, that made her shake. She pressed her palm to his chest. Warm. The rhythm shallow. Her mind spiraled. "He's alive," she gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. They buried him alive. She leaned closer, ready to call his name, to shout for help even though no one outside would hear her. But before she could speak, his eyelids fluttered. And opened. 2 black voids stared up at her. Not the eyes she had kissed under starlight, not the warm amber pools that once looked at her with adoration. These eyes held no light. No humanity. Only hunger. "Jabari?" she choked. His mouth twitched. Then opened. From it came not her name, not any word she recognized, but a guttural, ancient tongue, thick with consonants, sharp and broken like stones crashing into bone. The voice was low, too low, as if it rose not from his throat but from deep within the tomb floor itself. Amara scrambled back on all fours, her heels scraping against rock. He sat up. The burial cloth slumped from his shoulders and his hands, pale now, almost translucent, stretched toward her. The fingers had lengthened, bones popping unnaturally as if they'd grown in her absence. "No," she whispered, heart thudding. "No, no." She remembered the words Kunda had spoken in the forest, his voice barely louder than the rustle of leaves. If his blood no longer listens to the drum, he is no longer of this earth. The drums. The heartbeat of Kaloa. The ancient rhythm passed from generation to generation. The pulse of the ancestors. She had seen it before, how warriors trained to move with the beat of the great drum during rites. How children danced in time as if their feet knew something their minds did not. Jabari had once danced better than them all. Now, there was nothing in his movement but wrongness. He tilted his head, watching her like a curious predator. His lips curled, not in a smile but a mimicry of one, like something that had only seen joy but never felt it. She pressed herself against the farthest wall, searching for anything, stone, stick, even bone, to defend herself. He rose. It should have been clumsy. Jabari was a tall man, muscular, broad-shouldered. The tomb ceiling was low. But he moved like water poured through cracks, limbs folding in ways they shouldn't, neck turning with a soft pop. The ancient tongue spilled from his lips again, faster this time, like a chant or invocation. "Stop," she croaked. "Don't come near me. I'm not yours." His head jerked suddenly at her words. For the briefest moment, something flickered behind those black eyes. A flicker of confusion. Or recognition. Amara? The voice was like a wind trapped in a jar. Her name spoken in layers, one atop the other. Half of it was her husband's voice. The other half was ancient. Hollow. Mocking. Her lip trembled. "Are you still in there?" "Amara," he said again, this time softer. His hands lowered and he took one staggering step toward her. "I tried." "Tried what?" He suddenly dropped to one knee, clutching his skull. The voice burst out of him again, this time shrieking like shards of glass grinding through wood. He convulsed, writhing, and she saw it. Something black beneath his skin, like smoke twisting beneath a thin paper lantern. It moved up his neck, rippled beneath his temple, settled behind his eyes. "No," she shouted. "Fight it, Jabari. You were strong once, don't let it win." He looked up, jaw slack, a line of dark liquid dribbling from his ear. "There's no I," he gurgled. "Only the we, now." And just like that, the moment passed. He stood again, but he was no longer trembling. He no longer mimicked emotion. The thing that wore her husband's face was in full control now. Amara didn't scream. Screaming would only feed it. Instead, she slid silently to the side, her back pressed to the wall as she began to move around the edge of the tomb. Her fingers brushed the cracks in the stone, searching, feeling, for something. A sign. An edge. A weakness. Because now she understood. She wasn't sealed in a tomb with her dead husband. She was sealed in a tomb with the thing that had killed him, and taken his place. The thing wearing Jabari's skin stood taller now than he ever had in life. His spine had straightened too perfectly, his feet no longer shuffled like a man waking from death. There was grace in his movement, unsettling, fluid, like smoke threading through water. His shoulders rolled back and his chest rose as if breathing in power itself. His voice echoed in the chamber without effort. "I was never yours, Amara," it said, stepping into the thin shaft of light that cut through the tomb's ceiling. "Not truly. Not after the mountain. Not after the promise." Amara stayed near the far wall, body tensed, eyes flicking between the stone, the figure, and the ceiling's faint opening. Her blood still pulsed in her ears, but she forced calm into her voice. "What promise?" Jabari's head tilted back. For a moment, he smiled as if recalling a private joke. "There is a spirit beneath the deep rock," he said, pacing now, fingers trailing along the stone. "Old as bone. Older than names. It waits in the silence beneath the world where no drum can reach. I found it. It called me. And you answered," Amara said flatly. "I begged," he corrected, his voice suddenly sharp. "I begged it to end my pain, to stop the rot in my bloodline. It offered something better. Power. Eyes to see past the veil. Strength beyond death. And in return..." He turned slowly, fixing those black eyes on her. "I gave it the beating heart of Kaloa. I gave it me." Her lips parted. "You sold your soul. There are worse things to trade," he said, stepping closer. "And I am still me, in parts. Enough to offer you a place by my side." He stretched out his hand. The fingers had grown longer still. "Be my shadow bride. Walk with me when I rise again. Rule with me. The people will kneel or fall. You will be more than they ever allowed you to be." Amara felt bile rise in her throat. But she smiled faintly. "Your offer is generous," she said, her voice low and trembling just enough to sound convincing. The creature studied her for a long beat, searching her face for deception. Then slowly he nodded and turned his back to her. Good, he murmured. You've always had potential. The spirit saw it too. That's why it let you in here. That's why the tomb did not collapse. You are chosen whether you understand it or not. As he began tracing strange patterns into the tomb's floor with his clawed finger, Amara pressed her palm to the rough stone behind her and drew a long, trembling breath. Her hand was slick with blood from her earlier fall, the skin torn across her wrist where the bark rope had chafed her. She used it. Every movement had to be quiet, hidden. She dipped her finger in the blood and began drawing, a crescent, a spiral, a pair of slashes crossing a circle. Her grandmother had whispered these signs into her ears when she was a girl too young to understand. Not all magic is loud, her grandmother had said. The strongest magic is the one that watches and waits. Her blood smeared the stone with sacred memory. She drew slowly, cautiously, behind her back and along the wall, each sigil humming with a whisper only she could hear. She dared not look at them directly. Behind her, Jabari, the thing that claimed to be Jabari, spoke again. When I died, the spirit kept my flesh. It molded me like clay. It said, "You are not meant for death. You are meant to carry me." I let it in, piece by piece. And now I am more than I ever dreamed. Amara kept drawing. She marked the second sigil near a crack in the wall, blending it into the shadows. "You said I'm chosen," she replied, careful not to breathe too heavily. "What does that mean?" He turned again, and though he smiled, it never touched his eyes. "You're the key to my full return. Your blood, unmixed, firstborn of your line, marked by the old moon, that's the price left unpaid. The spirit needs your body alive, your soul bound to mine. Together we step beyond death. We become legend." Amara froze. Marked by the old moon. Her birthmark. The crescent-shaped scar on her hip that no one but her mother and Jabari had ever seen. She kept her voice steady. "And if I refuse?" He blinked once. The smile dropped. "Then your bones will feed the stone and I will find another. But it would be a waste. The spirit wants you. It hungers for your name." She nodded slowly and lowered her head. "Then let me prepare." He said nothing. She turned toward the stone altar and knelt beside it, pretending to pray. Instead, she marked one final sigil beneath its base, a counterseal, a ward of forgetting. It would dull the spirit's awareness just long enough for her plan. 3 signs. 3 seals. Her blood, her fear, her defiance. She stood again and turned to face him. "Then take me," she said, stepping forward. "I am yours." The thing smiled again and extended his hand. But the air changed. He paused. His fingers twitched. He looked past her, then slowly around the tomb as if sensing a wrong note in a familiar song. "Something's off," he said quietly. Amara said nothing. He sniffed the air. "You drew them. The signs." Amara met his gaze, her expression calm and terrible. "Then maybe you should ask the spirit what else I learned in the forest." In the thick green cradle of the forest, where the sunlight slipped through the canopy like whispered secrets, Kunda knelt in the middle of a circle carved into the earth by time and ritual. The wind had fallen silent around him. No birds sang. Even the insects dared not stir near the clearing, as though the air itself held its breath. The old shaman's white beard hung low over his chest, swaying slightly as he rocked back and forth. Around him, bowls of bone and calabash steamed with smoke from burning roots. A single carved drum, patched with antelope skin, sat untouched before him. He didn't beat it. Not yet. Instead, Kunda whispered. The language he spoke hadn't been heard in Kaloa in 3 generations. It was not meant for human ears. It was for those who lived in the spaces between, ancestors who remembered what the living had chosen to forget. He poured dust into the flames. It hissed and shimmered. Then came the voice, not from any mouth but from the air around him. "You call us with urgency, old root. Speak." Kunda's body trembled with the weight of it. His bones remembered this tongue better than his mind did. But still he raised his chin. "I call on the ones who walked before. I call on Odiu, daughter of flame. I call on Barega, the unseen hunter. I call on Jengu who swims between lives. Hear me now." The wind circled once, then hushed again. Kunda's voice cracked with pain. The chief who entered the mountain brought something back. Something wrong. He let it in. He opened his palm, revealing the cracked tooth of a goat, blackened and burned. The signs were there. He denied the drum. He swallowed the ash of the forgotten. He speaks now with a voice that is not his. The fire surged, burning bright blue. The spirits heard. They answered. The Kmuro. Kunda's breath caught. He had feared the name. Still, it sent a chill down his spine like wet fingers. "That is what walks now in Jabari's skin?" he asked. "Yes. The mountain spirit of dread. The Khmuro drinks fear. It coils itself in grief and gnaws at memory. When fed well, it becomes flesh. If they survive 3 nights together in the tomb, it will walk the earth in full form, immortal, crowned in bones." Kunda clutched his chest. "And the girl? She is the gate. Her blood was named before birth. If she breaks before the 3rd night, the spirit inherits the world of men." The silence that followed was suffocating. When the wind finally retreated, the shaman stood slowly, knees aching, hands shaking. He had no time to waste. He grabbed his staff, wrapped his shawl tight, and began the walk toward the village of Kaloa. They gathered reluctantly. Not because they didn't believe him, but because they did. Kunda stood at the edge of the sacred circle in the village square, firelight flickering across the lines of his face as the villagers huddled in silence. The elders, younger now, the replacements Jabari had approved, watched with wary eyes. Mothers held their children close. Some wept quietly, but none stepped forward. "I know what you think," Kunda said, voice hoarse from the journey. "You believe she's already gone. Or worse, cursed. That the tomb must remain sealed for our protection. That to open it would be to invite damnation." A ripple passed through the crowd. Some nodded. Others looked away. "But listen to me now," Kunda said, slamming his staff against the earth. "That thing is not our chief. It is Khmuro, the mountain spirit, the eater of fear. It wears Jabari's skin, but it does not carry his soul. It has twisted our grief into power. Amara is not its victim, she is the key. And if both live through the 3rd night, the spirit will be born into the world of men with full dominion." He pointed toward the tomb. "Right now you have a choice. We can break tradition and free her, or let fear make us servants to something older than death." A woman stepped forward, Fatima, the fishmonger's wife. Her hands trembled. "But the tomb laws were made by the ancestors. If we break them, won't their wrath curse us all?" Kunda's eyes softened, but his voice did not. "What do you think the ancestors are? Silent bones in the earth? No. They are wind and voice and fire. They sent me. They told me this law was never meant for this kind of death. The curse lives not in breaking tradition, but in clinging to it when it is already poisoned." Another voice, a younger man, shook his head. "But what if you're wrong? What if she did poison him? What if she's part of the darkness too?" Kunda sighed. He looked at their faces, tired, afraid, stretched thin by years of quiet madness. They had endured Jabari's unraveling in silence. Fear had sunk its roots deep. "She went to the forest to save him," Kunda said, quieter now. "She begged me to help. She offered her own soul in his place. You do not know her like I do. She is not our curse. She is our shield." But it wasn't enough. No one moved. Kunda turned slowly, firelight casting his shadow long across the circle. "Then mark this night," he said. "Mark the 2nd night since the tomb was sealed. One more, and the world you know will never be yours again." He left the circle, the silence behind him heavier than any verdict. Later that night he returned to the grove alone. He did not sleep. He whispered again to the wind, to the spirits, not to ask for their help this time, but to ask forgiveness, for a village that had forgotten how to be brave. The tomb pulsed with unnatural heat, the stone walls slick with breathless moisture, as if the air itself had begun to sweat. Amara crouched in the corner, blood still wet on her fingertips, the protective sigil she had drawn now glowing faintly with a light that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Her body ached. Her head spun. But her eyes stayed locked on the creature pacing near the center of the tomb, the thing that called itself Jabari. He no longer pretended to be human. His spine had curved into a serpentine arc, his limbs twitching with each step like something constantly adjusting to the prison of skin. His shadow stretched the wrong way, dragging behind him as though it were thinking for itself. Strange protrusions pulsed beneath the skin of his back, bone or smoke or both. When he smiled now, it was all teeth. "You cannot hide behind lines, girl," it said. "Not forever. This tomb belongs to me now. You are but warmth to fill the husk." Amara didn't speak. She couldn't, not yet. She was remembering the rhythm. The one her grandmother had taught her under the baobab tree during rainy seasons, when the thunder drowned everything but stories and songs. There was power in memory, in blood, in the women who came before her. The creature stepped closer. "The spirit promised me forever, and I opened the gate. I burned the ancestors from my tongue. I sealed the elders' names beneath stone. And you," he hissed, "you who slept beside me in ignorance, you will be the crown upon my rebirth." Amara finally stood. Her legs shook but held. You say you opened a gate, she said softly. But what walked through was never meant to stay. And the body you wear was never yours to keep. The thing's face twitched. Your defiance is wasted. I've already broken him. You welcome me. He asked for me. No, Amara whispered. He asked for healing. He asked for peace. You gave him pain. The sigils behind her began to burn brighter. The tomb's air shifted, curling with an ancient tension. She raised her hand, palm cut raw from the stone, and began to chant. It was not loud. It was not proud. It was a murmur, fragile as a breath, but ancient, older than this tomb, older than Kaloa itself. The chant bore the names of her foremothers, of rain singers and stone markers, of women who remembered the world before men tried to name it. Her voice cracked but did not stop. The creature lunged. She dropped to her knees and pressed her bloodied palm to the earth. The sigils flared. Light burst in a ring around her, and the creature froze, shrieking as smoke poured from its skin. Its form wavered, Jabari's face melted away, replaced by a twisted mask of void and flame. Its mouth opened in a scream that echoed without sound. You dare use old tongue? It roared. I am the old tongue, Amara answered. And I remember everything. From beneath her shawl she pulled what she had spent hours shaping in secret. A mirror of bone no bigger than her open hand, its edges carved from the rib of a forest antelope and its face polished smooth with river ash and tears. Bound by hair, blood, and fire, it held no reflection, only memory. The spirit recoiled. No. Yes, she whispered. She stepped into the center of the circle, blood trailing behind her, and held up the mirror. Jabari, she called. Not to the creature. To the man. The spirit howled, voice splitting into many. He is gone. Buried. I devoured him. You lied. She closed her eyes and reached not with her hands but her heart. She remembered him laughing. Holding her hand during storms. Whispering stories in the dark. The night he placed his palm over her womb and wept for children that never came. The man who once danced beneath moonlight, who once sang to her in secret. She held those moments in her chest, breathed life into them, and pushed them forward. The mirror pulsed. Then, his voice. Not the spirit's. Is Amara? It came from everywhere at once, weak, trembling. Like a dying echo fighting through water. The spirit staggered, smoke rising from its back, its claws tearing at its face. No, it bellowed. He is mine. I wear him. He chose me. Amara wept but did not waver. Then let him say so. Let him speak. The mirror shone like a sun beneath the ground. From the creature's chest, something began to push outward. A flicker, a shape, Jabari's true soul, broken, chained within the shadow. His eyes appeared not black but brown and full of tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know it would take you too. Then help me end it, she said. The spirit shrieked, its body unraveling, pieces of shadow sloughing off like shed skin. Amara dropped to one knee, pressing the mirror flat against the tomb floor. She began the final chant, the one that called not for protection, but for sealing. The mirror vibrated, pulling the shadow down, drawing it from Jabari's skin, his bones, his breath. It screamed. Clawed the air. Clawed her. Blood gushed from her chest where its fingers raked across her, but she did not stop. Her voice broke into coughing, then silence, but still her mouth moved, lips shaping the words passed down from mother to daughter. The circle flared once, then collapsed inward. The mirror cracked. The tomb fell silent. She collapsed beside it. For a long time she did not move. But slowly, very slowly, Jabari's voice came again. Quiet. Human. Amara. She opened her eyes. Barely. You came back. He knelt beside her, eyes clear, hands shaking. I'm so sorry. I wanted to fix everything. I wanted children. I wanted peace. She reached up, brushed a tear from his cheek. You wanted too much from places that give too little. Then she passed out. And he held her, weeping into the silence of their broken tomb. The air grew thick, unbreathable. The tomb shook as if a beast buried beneath it had begun to wake. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cracks spiderwebbed through the stone. The walls groaned in a chorus of ancient pain, and in the center of it all, Amara struggled to rise, her blood soaked into the earth, her body screaming with every breath. Jabari held her, his arms trembling, his face pale but fully his own. What's happening? He gasped, looking around. Is it ending? No, she whispered, her throat raw. Not yet. The spirit, it's not gone. Just wounded. As if in answer, A sound erupted from beneath them, a low, shuddering moan like the deep groan of mountains. The tomb floor split open in a jagged line, revealing a pit below, black, bottomless, alive. From it, a smoky tendril rose, wrapping around a support pillar and dragging it into the dark. The collapse had begun. The spirit's voice returned, not from Jabari but from the stone, the air, the very breath between their words. It was broken, furious, and desperate. You have defied me, you broke my vessel, but I will not die alone. The ground cracked wider. Go, Jabari said, pushing her gently. You have to climb. The roots. There's a way. You can still make it. But she didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on something else, something no one else could see. Amara's vision blurred, not from pain but from something ancient tugging at the corners of her sight. She blinked and the tomb melted away. She stood in a vast hall of red clay and bone, where firelight flickered across blood-streaked walls. In the center sat a throne made from the skulls of women. A figure lounged on it, massive, robed in black feathers, wearing the mask of a lion. It lifted its head. No eyes. Only darkness. But she saw him. The origin. The first cursed. Not a spirit born of wild magic, but a man. A chief, once praised, who had bound the spirits of his wives to his soul, draining their essence to keep his youth. When he was finally cast out, he fled to the mountains and swore vengeance. There the stones listened. And the Kimuro was born, not as a demon, but as a memory of a man who refused to be forgotten. You remember me, the voice said from behind the mask. You carry the blood of one I took. She screamed your name before you were born. Amara's hands shook. Her grandmother. That's what she'd meant all along. The chants, the sigils, the whispers at dusk. They weren't just protection. They were vengeance passed down through blood. She looked into the mask's eyes. I do remember. Then fear me. She stepped forward. I don't need to fear you. I know you. I see you. I name you. The throne shook. The figure hissed. You wouldn't dare. I do. She said the name. It slipped from her lips like water over hot stone. Forbidden, old, heavier than language. The moment it left her mouth, something ancient snapped. Not just in the vision, but in the world itself. Back in the tomb the earth howled. The cracks exploded in red light. From above, the villagers gasped as the tree atop the tomb split down the middle, and a great beam of crimson fire shot into the sky. The night trembled. Even the bravest of them dropped to their knees. Kunda, standing just outside the village circle, felt the power hit his bones. He looked to the horizon and whispered, she said it. She broke the curse. In the tomb, the floor began collapsing into the abyss, but the shadow tendrils, once strong, now recoiled, sizzling as if burned by her voice. They twisted violently, writhing like snakes in a boiling pot. The mirror of bone, still cracked but whole, pulsed with every echo of the name. The spirit screeched, not in fury now but in fear. Jabari pulled Amara close. What did you do? She looked up, sweat and blood glistening on her skin. I gave it back its name. And in doing so, I took away its power. The spirit screamed one final time, a soul-rending wail that shattered the last of the stones around them. The tomb's walls began to collapse inward, devouring the memory of its creation. Go! Jabari shouted again. But Amara shook her head. This is where I was always meant to stand. She turned to the glowing pit and knelt. From her palm she drew one final sigil, simple, ancient, a spiral enclosed by a flame. It was the symbol for last breath. I speak for those you silenced, she whispered, voice trembling but strong. I speak for my blood. You will never feed again. She pressed her hand to the tomb floor. The ground surged. Light exploded upward. The crimson beam that shot through the cracks was seen for miles. It rose into the sky, then folded back into itself like a wound closing. The earth fell silent. In its wake, a breeze passed over the village, cool, light, sweet with the scent of jasmine and ash. The death bell, long silent, rang once on its own. Then nothing. When the villagers finally found the courage to dig, they found the tomb collapsed entirely. The tree of binding had split down the center, its trunk blackened, its roots charred, but alive. Amara's body lay curled beside the mirror, her hand still resting on the final sigil. Jabari, dazed and shaking, was alive. But he said nothing for many hours. When he finally spoke, his words were few. She freed me. And all the others. The villagers wept. Some from shame. Some from awe. The curse was broken. But it had come at a cost paid by one woman, and the 1,000 women who whispered through her. The dust had settled. Ash and silence blanketed the land where the tomb once stood, as if the earth itself had paused to breathe. Then, movement. A whisper of shifting stone. A tremble in the earth. Fingers emerged from the cracked soil, clawing weakly toward light. One hand. Then another. And then a woman, smeared in blood and soil, pulled herself from the earth like a memory refusing to be buried. Amara. Her breath came in short gasps. Each inhale felt like fire, every movement laced with pain. Her skin bore the stories of what had happened below, sigils still faintly glowing on her arms, blood dried in sacred shapes, and eyes that no longer looked as they once did. They were deeper now. Like they'd seen the true face of night and refused to blink. The villagers watched in stunned silence. No one moved. Not even the wind stirred the trees. Then the first voice rose, an elder woman's gasp. She walks. Another dropped to his knees. Then another. And soon all of Kaloa, men, women, children, the once doubtful council, were kneeling in the red-stained dust as Amara stood at the broken mouth of the tomb, framed by the rising sun. To them she was no longer merely human. She had descended into the dark with a curse and returned carrying light. She crossed the veil, whispered a girl clutching her mother. She came back changed. Even Kunda, the old forest shaman, wept silently at the edge of the crowd. She did what none of us had the courage to do, he whispered. She faced the buried name and lived. But Amara said nothing. Her limbs shook as she stepped forward. One foot, then the other. She passed through the kneeling crowd and no one dared touch her, not from fear but reverence. The village parted like river reeds before her. Behind her, the broken tree, the tree of binding, was still smoldering. The elders gathered silently and began covering the tomb with sacred soil, blessed by ash and drum water. No more would bodies be buried with the cursed. No more would women be condemned by law to die for fear or superstition. The decree came not from the council. It came from what they had witnessed. The old law was struck down that very morning and with it the tomb sealed forever. They begged her to lead. To take the place of the fallen, to sit at the center of their circle and speak law in the name of the ancestors. Even Kunda offered his staff, kneeling before her with tears in his eyes. But Amara only shook her head. I do not belong to your circle, she said softly. Nor to the tomb. Her voice was like cracked stone, low, powerful but changed. I walk where truth still breathes. I walk where names are not swallowed by power. Where will you go? Asked a boy from the edge of the crowd, eyes wide and wet. She looked toward the forest, green and silent, watching her with knowing leaves. Where voices still speak truth, she whispered. To heal. And with that, Amara turned from the village. Barefoot, bruised and broken, but unbowed, she walked into the forest as the sun climbed over the trees. The wind stirred for the first time since the spirit's scream, curling around her like a sigh of peace. Some say it whispered her name. Others claim it was silent, as if not daring to speak what had become sacred. From that day forward, stories spread. Some claimed she became a spirit walker, half in this world, half in another. Some swore she healed children with her breath, or summoned rain by humming forgotten songs. Others said she was seen dancing in moonlight, laughing with shadows, or sitting by the river speaking to invisible ancestors. But none dared speak her name without bowing first. And children would be told at dusk. She went into the tomb and came back with a broken heart and unbroken fire. If ever you are afraid, call her name. She will come, walking in dust and silence. And so Amara rose. Not just from the tomb, but into legend. The grave was not large. Just a flat stone half sunk in red earth, tucked between wildflowers and roots at the edge of the forest where the tomb had once groaned with curses. 2 names were carved into it, simple, unadorned but eternal, Jabari and Amara. Children came there often, drawn not by grief but by wonder. They'd sit in a half-circle as twilight draped the sky in indigo and ask the elders to tell them the story. Always the same place. Always the same pause. Always the same hush before it began. They didn't speak it loudly. Long ago, one elder would begin, there was a chief who returned from the mountain, but he brought back more than what he carried up. And his wife, the boldest child would ask, eyes wide. She followed him into the dark, the elder would whisper. They locked her in a tomb with him. But he was no longer just a man. And she was more than any of them had imagined. The forest behind the grave, lush and green, always grew unnaturally quiet as the sun dipped low. Birds fell silent. Crickets paused. The wind, which usually rustled the tall grass, stilled. Some said Amara still walked those paths when the sky turned soft. Some claimed they'd seen a figure in white near the broken tree, her steps soundless, her gaze sharp but kind, guiding those who wandered too far, especially young women who had been wronged, forgotten, or cast out. She did not bury her husband, the elders would sometimes murmur to the curious. She buried a god. A greedy one who fed on silence and called it tradition. Now the village walls bore new carvings, not of ancestors with weapons, but of a woman standing before fire, her hand raised not in surrender but in song. Beneath her feet, sigils spiraled outward like ripples in a sacred pond. And among those carvings, etched with dark ink and deeper truth, was a new law, the kind no one dared break. We no longer bury the living with the dead. That line alone, passed from parent to child, changed how justice breathed in Kaloa. No longer would fear wear the mask of ritual. No longer would women be offered to graves to protect the pride of men. The living would walk. The dead would rest. In time, Amara's tale became more than memory. It became myth. Some called her the bone mirror. Others, the bride who burned the dark. Her story traveled beyond Kaloa, across villages, rivers, and even borders, changing forms slightly in each telling but never losing its heart. A woman who faced death and unmade it. They say the fiercest magic is the kind born not from spells but choices. And when the last embers of day sank into the earth, and the children leaned forward for the final line, it was always the same. A hush, a breath, and then. Some women carry death and still choose life. That is the fiercest magic of all.